All right, so I think we're at 7 o'clock here, so we'll get started. I appreciate everyone coming here today to the Bitcoin Meetup. Usually when Bitcoin's at around $20,000, the room's really full. So the fact that we're between $10,000 and $14,000 right now, and you're here, it means that you're in the minority. It means that you're special. You're actually kind of taking an interest in the cryptocurrency market. Here we actually pride ourselves on having really good speakers, really good presentations related to the cryptocurrency space. Here with the Bitcoin Meetup, we have over 2,000 members. So we're really good at trying to connect people who are in the space, doing a lot of different things in Utah or across the United States or in other parts of the world. So the fact that you're here, we're happy to help. And so thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. By ways of introduction, my name is James Leba. I'm one of the organizers of the Bitcoin Meetup. I've been doing this now for a little over a year. We also have kind of passed that torch of organizing the meetup to different people over the years. Also, Michelle Robinson, she's one of the co-organizers of the Bitcoin Meetup. And then also, Mark Rees, he's the one that actually helped us get into Overstock.com and use their space. He helped actually start one of the Bitcoin Meetups and kind of keep that going for a little while. So, really just kind of talk to us or any of the original people if you're working on something or if you have a question. We're happy to help, give you free information, point you in the right direction, so welcome. I'd like to, before we get started with the presentation, just wanted to make a note of some of the groups that have actually kind of helped support the Bitcoin Meetup financially and then just by also just being there to support us, kind of keep this thing going. This thing's a nonprofit. We don't make any money off of this. This is just, again, for the community, educate people the right way, making sure they have the right information, but we have a few different groups that are helping us out. So I'll start in the bottom left, Medici Ventures. They're actually part of Overstock.com. It's the venture capital arm of Overstock.com that actually invests in different kind of cryptocurrency blockchain projects. They're invested across a wide spectrum of different projects. Very cool group. We have some people who actually come and speak here, and so we invite them, but they actually are really nice and they actually let us use their space once a month. So wanted to highlight those guys. The Tusk Network, they're a cryptocurrency group that focuses on gun ownership and gun rights, and they actually have a meetup once a month over at the gun range. And so we post their meetup on our meetup page as well. So if you're all about gun rights, then the Tusk Network is really great. PowerBlock, that's who I work with. We do cryptocurrency lending as well as OTC transactions. And so if anybody's trying to kind of borrow against their Bitcoin, think of it as like a home equity loan. You have this equity in your Bitcoin, you want to borrow against it, we'll do that for you. So we've been doing that for about a year. And then CoinBook, they're a cryptocurrency exchange that's actually local to the state of Utah. So the owner of CoinBook, the CEO, he started everything, got licensed, started his exchange in Utah. So we kind of like to think of him as like the local cryptocurrency exchange for the state of Utah. So all of these guys have contributed one way or another to the Bitcoin Meetup. And then, if anybody else wants to kind of contribute or kind of help us out, we're always looking for people to help us put on different events and schedule different things. And so just wanted to kind of say, if you guys are interested in supporting any of these groups, then, feel free to ask me and I'm happy to give you more information. Now, today's presentation is going to be given by Mark Rees. He's going to be talking about a major paradigm shift with relation to Libra, which is one of the cryptocurrencies that was announced by Facebook, along with an assortment of different groups. It's a pretty big project. Obviously, Trump just tweeted about it, so it's gaining a lot of media attention. But before we get into that particular project and introduce Mark, one of the co-organizers, Michelle Robinson, wants to talk to you about a couple of things that she's working on. So, Michelle?
Do you care if can we plug this in so people can write in dates and stuff? I also want to, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. We have like people here. I mean, we always have people here, but everyone's here to hear Mark, and that's awesome. So thanks for being here. You can't hear me? Is that better? Okay. Okay. Thanks for being here. And I also wanted to point out we have Jason here, and you want to hold up your book? So this is another, a project that we like to support, and it's Toshi the Moon. If anyone hasn't heard of it, it's really cute little kid's book about Satoshi as a little boy and how he's going to the moon, and it teaches people about what's going on, like the blockchain community and Bitcoin. Oh, you did? Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, I would love to. That's awesome. I don't know if I have trivia. Maybe we can think of something, or yeah, maybe by the end we can think of something. That's awesome. Thank you.
Bitcoin will be at the end of the night.
Who is Satoshi? So a few quick announcements. So I don't know if a few of you have been to the Disruptive Technologies think tank that we have going every month. It's every third Tuesday of the month. And this one will be this Tuesday on July 16th, if you would like to come out to that. I do max it out for attendees because I want to kind of create more of a collaborative and engaging environment. So max it out about 20 people. There's still some room if people want to come to that. We also have the Ogden Valley Balloon Festival and the Digital Merchant Symposium. So this is kind of my baby. I don't know, I wasn't here last time, but Terry, she's the chairman of the Balloon Festival, and her and I teamed up to bring the blockchain and Bitcoin technology to a very large event that already exists. So we're going to have a full day symposium on Saturday, August 17th. And I would love for you to come out. It's in Eden, so it is a little ways out, but you can make maybe a weekend of it, go out, to Pineview, go out on the lake, and then come in on Saturday. We're going to start the symposium about 9 o'clock. We'll go till about 5. Tons of fun stuff to do, vendors, things like that. Really great schedule. Yeah. Really great. Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So yeah, we have 17 balloons, and they are doing balloon rides. I tried to get a Bitcoin balloon made, but unfortunately the sponsorship, to make that happen didn't happen this year. Hopefully we can make it happen next year. Yeah. Oh, the first one? We normally have it at Kiln. I'm gonna have to change the location. We're probably just gonna have it at the library downtown. Yeah, either city library or the Marmalades library. Does anyone care which one we go to? City? Yeah, it's on our Meetup. What do you mean? Mm-hmm. Yep, it is. Yep, awesome. Yeah, yeah, city. The only thing is parking. I just didn't know how people felt about parking and paying for parking. But yeah, tracks, that works too. Any other questions on that? So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we onboarded a few of them to accept Coin, and I'm really pushing to hopefully educate the vendors to accept other cryptocurrencies as well. I think the majority of that's actually going to happen during the festival. But one of the things that is huge that I kind of need your guys' help. We need volunteers pretty badly. So if you would like. We have a booth that can be, strictly for blockchain and Bitcoin, kind of representing the technology. We can show people different apps, and if people have questions or anything like that, we're going to brand it to where it says, I don't know, we could put Bitcoin or whatever. And we also will be having a booth for the meetups, which was something that Lynn wanted to make happen. So, Yeah. So that also includes if Ravencoin, since it's a decentralized community, Terry and myself are donating a space for Ravencoin. Same thing for if Tusk wants one. Rob's not here, but and then also Dash, which if people want to make that happen, that's kind of, I mean, I'm creating a space for you, but we need to have the volunteers because I can't be at all the booths. So if anyone's interested, yeah, if anyone's interested in volunteering or please, yeah, raise your hand, let me know. I can give you more information. There is also, if you want to scan this QR code, and this will take you directly to the website that I've created for the Balloon Festival so you can get more information. So there you go. Scan the QR code. I can also, I can pull it up for you too, but I'll give you guys a second on that. A couple other things coming up. Wyoming Hackathon, the WYO Hackathon. We went last year. It was a blast. We had a really great time. We took Mark's, the RV. What kind of, it's a really fancy, it was really fun. Anyway, Winnebago, yeah. So we drove out there and the hackathon was a 3-day event. It was really awesome. They're doing it again. And is everyone ready are you done? I can put the dates back up here. So September 20th through the 22nd. And, that's just, what was it, like 7-hour drive, something like that? I think we should go. So if anyone, if we want to maybe do a caravan or something like that. It's in Laramie. So they have it at the University of Wyoming there in Laramie. Yeah. What's up? What? Yeah. Yep. Just a jaunt over from Denver. So next thing that's kind of in the docket is World CryptoCon's coming up October 29th through the 31st, and that's in Las Vegas. And we went last year. It was really fun. A few of us. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely on the map. So.
There's like the conferences, there was a lot of conferences back in 2018, but a lot of them kind of went under because they had low attendance. But now the conference scene for cryptocurrency is like a big one in New York for Consensus for Blockchain Week, and then this one's turning into a really big one for kind of Blockchain Week in Las Vegas.
Yeah, last year was the first time they did World CryptoCon, and it was a hit. They did a really great job. So I'm not sure, are you planning on speaking again, or do you know? Are you? Okay, so Tron will be speaking and playing poker, cool. Anyone else speaking at that, or? So I think that's about it for announcements. Again, month away from the Balloon Festival. Please, guys, we need volunteers. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring, if you have a company that you want to represent, we can put together a booth for you. Terry and I even put together a or scholarship program for those that are launching a new product or something like that, and maybe they don't have the funds to do a full sponsorship. We can at least get you a booth, and all it takes is just go onto the website and fill out an application for that scholarship, and then we'll kind of get you through the pipeline on getting approved for that. So any questions? Anyone else have any announcements, comments, anything? Anyone? Lynn? Make the Lynn's he's been awesome. Yeah, he's really excited about it. So. Yeah, and the whole idea with it, I mean, there's going to be about 16,000 every year. They get about 16,000 attendees. So it's my kind of motive or something that really that I'm really passionate about is just getting people educated and comfortable with what's going on in the Bitcoin community. I mean, it might happen pretty fast. So it is happening fast where we're gonna, you know, take on more adoption and stuff like that. And so, you know, my philosophy is, you know, I want people around me and the community to be using it. I want to be able to go to, you know, a food truck or something like that and say, hey, can I pay with Bitcoin? You know, like, so anyway, that's just me. I don't know. I'm done. Any other things, and we'll move on to, yeah. For the food? Lynn says the food is great. I haven't been, but awesome. Okay. I think we're good.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
And by the way, Michelle recently was featured and interviewed in Forbes magazine, by the way, as a blockchain entrepreneur helping to organize events. And so I think that's pretty impressive. So let's give her another round of applause, actually. Because it's that type of stuff that keeps this space moving forward and keep going and growing. It's just people that are dedicated to the space, you know, dedicating time, money, resources to this. So thanks a lot, Michelle. And the Balloon Festival too. I think there should be honestly more volunteers there because, I mean, it's hard to put on an event. And once you do one event successful, you just keep on doing them year after year. And, you know, I think we can all benefit from actually having more cryptocurrency events integrated with just regular kind of events that are in kind of our communities. So thanks a lot, Michelle. Yeah. That kind of sounds like a lot of manual work. I kind of would rather just pay $50 and get a ride. All right. Well, let's get to the main presentation here. I'm super excited to introduce our main speaker today, Mark Rees, somebody that I've known for a while. Actually, my cryptocurrency mentor. Actually, you know, got me involved in the space, taught me everything that I know about the space, and kind of put me on the right path. Mark is close to a cryptocurrency expert as it gets. You know, well over 10,000 hours involved in this space. He discovered Bitcoin. Then he started writing for Bitcoin Magazine. And one of his articles actually that he wrote called what was it called? The Future of Money, I think it was. Oh yeah, Know Your Exchange. Yeah. So the article is Know Your Exchange, and it's actually featured in the Smithsonian Institute under the Future of Money. So you kind of see all of the old monetary systems, and then you see a magazine cover with Mark's article with Bitcoin on the top. And so Mark's been in the space for a while. He's taught thousands of students, either online or live. He's gone to a lot of different conferences, been heavily involved in the space. And he's just overall really smart, and he's a great entertainer when he speaks. And so he's cryptocurrency retired, so he's hard to actually get out nowadays. He's usually traveling with his wife, and from time to time he'll pop up and I'll grab him, and I was able to bring him here today. So Mark actually created a special presentation for you guys. We are recording it. He wants to talk about the paradigm shift, specifically about Libra and how everything's changing in that space. And so can we give a round of applause for Mark Rees?
Thanks, James. All right, let me plug in this laptop and see if it's still working. All right. How's everybody? Can you hear me okay? I think I have to breathe into this thing. You guys are low energy. Stand up for a second. Let's see if some energy. Come on, wake up, wake up. Let's see you do a little hula. You know, I saw a bumper sticker that says, what if the hokey pokey was what it was all about? Oh, yeah. So thanks for coming. Lamp air, hope that stays okay. So I started thinking back, you know, I'm a big picture guy, about everything that's changing, everything that we're witnesses of. We are in one of the biggest paradigm changes in the history of man. And people don't realize that yet. You are so, say, lucky/unlucky to be alive right now to see this happen. There's an ancient Chinese saying that says, that's an insult, that says, may you live in interesting times. Everybody can live in those times that just go by and nobody cares about. But in the interesting times, during war and famine and things you tell your grandkids about, they're sometimes not that pleasant. And so we're now at one of those monumental changes. And is it good or is it bad? Or do we know yet? One thing's for sure is break out the popcorn and watch it unfold. There is one thing stronger than all the armies in the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. That's from Victor Hugo, a French poet. And that article, that quote, I keep around all the time because that is so true right now, especially. Trump tweeted today, you know, what was the Trump? The Bitcoin is not a currency and never will be, and this new Facebook Libra is just a joke and it's not going to go anywhere without all kinds of regulation and everything. A world stable currency that can replace 196 currencies. I think 196 countries, about 180 currencies in the world right now that all fluctuate and fight with each other and all have their own fiscal policies. And a lot of you probably already know that the average lifespan of a currency created by the government that's not backed by anything is less than 40 years. Through the last 3,000 years, none of them have survived more than 100 years. But 40 is about the average. So when Trump says the US dollar will be the currency and will never die, he's not very well versed in history. Paradigm shifts, history of monetary revolutions. We see, it's working here a little bit. Rome had the first reserve currency of the world back in they say, can you create your own gold? Can you just create gold out of thin air? So they didn't actually create fiat currency. They had slaves mine the gold and then they put their stamp on it. But they held on. The first hyperinflation happened with Rome. Did you know that? And how can you hyperinflate a coin? Anybody have an idea how you can do that? Right. They mixed different metals with it, and by the time 300 years went by, what started out as 100% silver was like 5% silver and 95% junk. To the point where people just quit accepting it anymore. They hyperinflated by diluting the silver content in their own coins. And then Florence had it for a couple of centuries. They had the dominant, and then the Netherlands as they started exploring the New World, and then the Spanish. I actually own one of these. These are the pieces of 8 coin that you may or may not have heard about. That went for 100, 200 years. That was really great. In fact, our forefathers in the United States, that was our currency. That was the first currency that we actually used as United States citizens during the Revolutionary War time. We tried printing our own, called the Continental, that hyperinflated away to become just worthless paper. But so they used as the world monetary system. The regular people had gold, but we were poor, United States still. We were very, they kept tax on our money away to England, and so that's what we used as a standard, as the pieces of 8. Then the British pound, mostly because they had the strongest army, the strongest navy, and so they colonized all these different parts of the world, Hong Kong and India and all the places. And so that became the dominant until about World War I. And then they pretty well, with most of Europe, kind of went bankrupt trying to fight the big wars, the Great War. And then the United States kind of took over about in the 1920s. And so how long is our history? We're about 100 years now. So we see a lot of these the last 200-300 years. So when Trump says we will never, it'll always be the American dollar, we kind of laugh because he hasn't studied history very well. But I have a warning here. This is usually when they transfer these monetary systems, it doesn't go easy. It's usually accompanied by war and distress. The previous regimes don't go down lightly. They don't give up without a fight. These guys are in charge. They're large and in charge, and they get that way, and they want to stay in power. They want to stay influential, and so they will fight until the very last, until they can't anymore. And we'll talk about that. What is a paradigm shift? The common phrase that we use today actually was started by an artist or an author. He was a scientist named Thomas Kuhn, I think is how you say the last name. The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And what he found was people that are not in the normal system are the ones who come up with the biggest, outrageous new ideas that then take over the previous thinking. So if you were in, as a science, or a doctor, say, what are the odds that you do all your training and you work on people and you save lives and everybody thinks of you as a miracle worker, and then someone comes along and says, I think there's a thing called, there's invisible bugs that you can't see that are infecting people. In fact, the story goes that there was one famous doctor who he was world famous, and he would go to conferences and give speeches, and but what they found was in his hospital, I think it was in France, his hospital had the bad distinction of having the highest mortality rates for ladies in childbirth. They started keeping stats on it, and for whatever reason, his hospital was 3 times more likely to have a woman die in childbirth than all the other hospitals in town. And what he found is when he'd go to these conferences out of town, the women suddenly lived. The mortality rate plummeted when this guy was out of town, and he was the one delivering the babies. And so he started thinking, well, there is something, it's got to be something related to me. I don't really know what I'm doing. Let me think about it. Well, I go down to the morgue and cut these cadavers open. And he was working on dead people and disease and whatever. And then immediately, they didn't care about washing their hands. They'd go up and deliver a baby. And lo and behold, these babies would die and the ladies would die. And he had no concept of the idea that these little invisible microbes could be things they couldn't see. How could you believe in something you couldn't see? But were these germs? And of course, that was a very controversial thing at the time. The people in the establishment, the doctors and the administrators laughed at this idea. For 40 years, they repelled the idea that there could be this thing called germs. It was just a theory, right? Germ theory. And they held on and fought and fought and fought until they eventually died out. And the new people that started believing in these things that they couldn't see, called germs, were actually, a bad thing and were infecting people. And they started learning about sanitation and people started saving their lives, and the mortality rates plummeted. So what he found is this model repeats itself over and over and over. And so he wrote the book about it, and he gave several examples of it. And it always comes in the same way. So you have the pre-science. This is where things, there's nobody recording anything. It's just life just happens. And then there's a normal science. That's when the doctors, associations exist, and they all say, you go along to get along. Everybody does the same thing. You think the same way. And anybody who doesn't think that way is ridiculed and laughed out and ostracized. But then we have a model drift. Then we start seeing, well, there's something wrong with this. Everybody's got these doctors and we're saving a whole bunch of lives, but why is it that people are dying over here? And so they'll start seeing everything that you think isn't adding up. Something's wrong with this picture. Maybe not know what it is, but something's wrong with that. And then things just completely break down eventually. And we see that in all kinds of things. We're seeing it, we'll talk about that now, how it's turning into a crisis now. And then only out of desperation does somebody outside the system, this is so important that it's somebody that's not growing up in the normal science doing the group think, it's an outsider who comes up with a new idea that is so outrageous. If it had been inside, it would have been killed in the cradle. They would have laughed him out. They would have, destroyed his reputation, whatever. So the revolution always comes from the outside. And then eventually, there's a paradigm change. They look at the old system, they look at the new system. The old system that people are hanging on for dear life, they want nothing to change to keep them in power, but they're completely swept over because people are thinking in the new way, the new generation, and they've realized that they can opt in to the old way or opt in, opt into the old way or the new way. And James always mentions millennials, right? They're the ones having to take on all this debt that we keep pushing onto them. They have this new way of thinking about things, and they're getting political. They're a lot more political than the generation before them. Your bailout? Well, it's called Bitcoin. So normal science, now let's bring it down to economics and monetary theory. And right now, the guy who kind of started this whole thing is John Maynard Keynes. And during the Great Depression, he started looking at all the business cycles, and he started, there's no demand for all this stuff. We have all these people waiting, ready to work, but the businesses are so afraid that they're going to go out of business that they don't spend money on retooling, and they can't hire anybody. So everybody was afraid and become a self-perpetuating cycle. He says, well, we need demand from somewhere, and it's not coming. It was stagnant for years and years and years. So he says, wait a second, let's stimulate the economy by making the government buy stuff. What a great idea! We have this Great Depression. In fact, let's get everybody to just, well, what we need to do is just temporarily, though, let's just go into debt. We'll pay it right back off, but just to get things rolling, right? What a great idea. We'll stop. We swear we'll stop one day. But the people in power think, oh, wow, all I have to do to get votes is to give my people more stuff. So there's two ways to do that, right? You can spend money on a bunch of things, or you can roll back the taxes, right? It gives more people money in their pockets generally. So there's two ways to do it. But it's a lot easier to go into debt than to say, we have to, fire a bunch of government workers. That becomes unpopular. So rolling back taxes, sounds really good. But you know what they're doing? Trump just rolled back taxes, right? It has the same net effect as spending a whole bunch of money and getting into worse debt. But the best or the worst of both worlds. Let's spend a whole bunch of money, raise the debt, and cut back taxes at the same time. So you get the worst of both worlds. Well, it made sense during the Great Depression. In the short term, that can be really good if you have someone that's disciplined and can scale it back as soon as the traction takes hold. But does not work in the long term. So now we have in our cycle the model drift. Anybody want to know what $1 trillion looks like? We have a $100 bill. You stack 100 of those together, you have a nice little pack there. $1 million will fit in a suitcase. It'll fit in a briefcase. $1 million sounds like a lot, but even in $100 bills, you can pack that around pretty easy. $100 million now you're down to a pallet. You'll need a pallet to stack those around. You get a bunch of these pallets together before you got $1 billion. It gets 10 pallets, and then $1 trillion. Here's the little guy right here, and the pallet stacked double goes a long ways. Now, we just spent, I think the deficit for the last quarter was, I think, $3.7 trillion deficit. That means we just added that much debt, 3 of those high, in the last 3 months. We're in deep we're in deep crap. But they're trying to roll it forward, and when they take out these long-term debts that are paid over 40 and 50 years, and so I, as a Generation Xer, say, hey, thanks, James, the millenniums. You guys are going to be paying off for our excesses. We're basically putting off into future generations to pay back what we're doing today. Model drift. I thought this is kind of funny. Hey, let's start spending some of this money into the economy. They just shovel from one end of the pile to the same end of the pile and say, look, we got prosperity. All they did is move the shells around. But let's talk about our debt. This is throughout, the history. The Revolutionary War, we got into a lot of debt with France. Oh, this is about the only period Andrew Jackson actually got rid of the central bank at the time, paid off all our debt, and then Civil War. That's the biggest reason we go into debt. Have to, do whatever we can, war bonds, to pay for all of these expenses for war. Gets generally close to being paid off. Oh, World War I. Get that taken care of, almost paid off. Oh, World War II, that's the big one. See, this is all the output that we do as a country. It's called GDP, and this is 100%. Everybody that can be working is working, and we were putting out all kinds of products, and we're selling, and we're doing the best we can. WW2 comes up. We're actually over the 100%. We're actually spending more than the entire country is making to pay off the debt and getting into more debt. So this, it's either this or die, right? You're in World War. You're an existential threat. So you do what you have to do. Gets back down. Oh, .com boom busts. Have to stimulate the economy. Maynard Keynes. We're going to Keynesian economics. We're going to print a whole bunch of money and paper over the big debt crisis. And then you see 9/11, and you see the housing boom bust. And you can see we're almost to World War II standards, and by about 2020, we're going to be, every bit of output America makes, we're going to be spending in debt again by these projections, and it gets terrible from there. So what started as in the Great Depression, the Keynesian economics, monetary theory, they got off the gold standard then. They stopped supporting American dollars with any kind of precious metals. They said, well, we're good for it. Faith of the good faith and credit in the American system. What's that? War in 2010, we're right here, right? Say that again? Right, yeah, and so we had 9/11, right? In around 2000, you see this goes up. We're still fighting the war on terror, right? Afghanistan. There's a whole bunch of, it started with 9/11, but it continues in all the programs of the Department of Homeland Defense. All these things are costing a lot of money, unfunded liabilities. But these are also politicians. This is Obamacare. This is all kinds of stuff that they mandated by law, but there wasn't a way. We're over GDP. There's not a way to pay for it unless we go into debt for it. So, model drift. I took this off of yesterday's headlines. Debt piles up just 25% since the election. And we're talking in the trillions of dollars. We're talking in the tens of trillions of dollars. So imagine that little map of the guy standing with the money, 40, 50 times higher. Model drift. And then after the model drift, we get into in that cycle, the model crisis. And here, I just pulled all these headlines just recently. Your pension's a lie. There's 210 trillion of liabilities that the government can't fulfill. So who's planning on a Social Security retirement now? They kept putting mine off. Okay, now it goes from 65 to 67. I just got something in the mail that says, oh, by the way, whatever you were planning on, all those things that we've been sending in the mail, you're about 67% of that's actually, we predict will still be there. So don't count on 100% of it. We're going to take a haircut of a third of that right now if things go super well. And that was not counting all this graph I just showed you. Financial weapons of mass destruction. Here's the United States money supply, about 15 trillion in circulation at any one time. Well, how about in the world gross domestic product, right? $50 trillion that the entire world output in a year. So now we have $100 trillion. If we start looking at all the stocks and real estate and money in circulation, everything in the world, $100 trillion. That's a lot of money. And then we have derivatives. And that completely dwarfs everything. I've seen this calculated at $4 quadrillion in derivatives. That's people making bets, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on the financial situations. It's enough to completely wipe out the world money supply 10 times over. We'll go into this a little bit more, but the banker bets. This is our money in circulation around the world. This is measured at about 80 million liquid money and available credit that's quick. And the bank derivative bets is $550 trillion. That's notional value. That's if everything was netted, that's still how much is out there. So you can see the bankers could wipe out the whole entire world economy 5 times over just with stupid bets, and they're doing it. I got this video. Anybody see the Big Short with Brad Pitt in it? They did an excellent job, better than anybody I could find, that actually explains how these derivative markets work. So let me play that one for you.
represent a single mortgage bond. Showing 7, that's a really good hand.
Do you want to just try to get the mic here?
Well, here's Dr. Richard Thaler, father of behavioral economics, and Selena Gomez to explain.
Okay, so here's how a synthetic CDO works. Let's say I bet 10 million on a blackjack hand.
10 million because this hand is meant to represent a single mortgage bond. Okay, Selena has a pretty good hand here, showing 18, dealer showing 7. That's a really good hand for Selena. Good odds. In fact, her chances of winning this hand are 87%.
So, my odds are good. I'm on a winning streak. Everybody in this place wants to get in on the action. How could I lose, right?
Now, this is a classic error. In basketball, it's called the hot hand fallacy. A player makes a bunch of shots in a row. People are sure they're going to make the next one. People think whatever's happening now is going to continue to happen into the future. During the real estate boom, markets were going up, and people thought they would never go down.
So people who are watching and think that I won't lose will make a side bet. Now this is the first synthetic CDO.
I love Selena Gomez. I bet you 50 million she wins, and I'll give you 3-to-1 odds.
3-to-1 odds? Okay, I'll take that bet.
Now, somebody else is going to want to make a bet on the outcome of their
Bet you
bet.
50 million she wins.
That will lead to synthetic CDO number 2.
Hey, I bet you 200 million that lady in the glasses wins that bet.
She probably will win, so I want a great payoff.
How about 20-1?
Deal.
And this will go on and on with more and more synthetic CDOs.
And we can transform an original $10 million investment into billions of dollars.
You okay?
No. I actually feel pretty sick.
So I'm going to do.
And that's how you take down the world banking system. Each bank has insurance with the other, each has borrowing debts with the other, and as soon as one starts to go down, it creates a domino effect. And it's not subject to borders. These, as you saw, if you were around paying attention in 2008, this is what happened. This is Lehman Brothers. That a lot of the banks were guilty of having, these bets on bets on bets on bets. That's what the derivatives are. One person said it's like you don't even have to have any financial interest yourself. It's like buying homeowners insurance on your neighbor's house and then setting it on fire. They could do that. They could do things that would create the financial conditions that would pay off those bets. And it's completely legal. And that's why I said in the money shuffling, it got up to over $4 quadrillion in these bets. And they're high risk, of course, and they're done over the counter. They're actually done off balance sheets accounting. So there's different rules. They don't have to report this to the bank holders and the financial regulators. They're legally, and they may have changed that since 2008 with the Frank Dodd bill, but legally they could put a huge portion in. And they were, if you go to the bank right now, there's only about 10% of the money in the bank, right? They have a 10-to-1 loaning ratio. You have to keep 10% for every dollar that they loan out. Well, with investment banking, it's down, it was at 2%, right? So they could lend out 98% and just keep 2% there. But what happens if the market fluctuates 3%? They've only got 2% of the money there. It just went sideways with them by 3%. That bank becomes insolvent that fast. So it's not just a matter of, we don't have money. No, they're completely wiped out. And there are several banks that are in that situation. Now, of course, we went and bailed out these banks, but which is the one that we didn't? There was only one that we thought, okay, we've got, if we're going to bail out every bank, that creates a moral hazard. No, there's going to be no risk to the bank managers, the bank presidents. They're just going to go take all the risks because they're going to bail them out. What's the worst that could happen? So they thought, all right, we're going to leave an example here. This is going to be the first one that we're not going to bail out, and it was Lehman Brothers. And Lehman Brothers was deep into these derivatives, and they said, okay, we got to let one go as an example, and they let Lehman Brothers go, and then everything else collapsed. The AIG insurance, everybody was trying to back that up, they realize they just torched the world on fire by letting that one bank go down. They had to go rescue everybody else immediately. They couldn't even think about it anymore. Nancy Pelosi was there. There was a bunch of people there in Congress. They had one guy come in. Well, it was Ben Bernanke, and he was the former federal chief, and he was also there with Hank Paulson, the U.S. Treasury, president of the U.S. Treasury. I don't know if president's the right word, but the head honcho. They walked into Congress and said, look, we need this TARP bill. I don't know if you realize it, but the entire country, the banking system is going to be out of money tomorrow afternoon. And by tomorrow night, ATMs are going to run out of money. And by 2 days from now, the grocery stores are going to be completely wiped out, and there is no money to replace them. They had made plans to call out FEMA. People don't realize how close we were right to the edge there. And so he got on his knees and begged them to sign, off on the TARP bill, which really kind of rescued us. As much as I hate to say, we got in debt and we bailed them out, but it kept the country going. And really, the world too, because the Fed was a lender of last resort to all these other central governments. So it really kept, we were on, people don't realize how thin of a line we were on for the entire world monetary system going down. So, model revolution. Previous paradigms were replaced by another believed to be better and more accurate. There will be teams that develop and divisions between the camps can't even talk about things in the same language. They can't even agree on the same terms as they fight about how to go forward and how they can even try and speak of the data in the same way. Has everybody seen this picture before? You know what it is? Is this the young lady you see there, her back turned to us? Or is this the old lady with her nose and her mouth here? Well, each team sees it differently. They're looking at the same data and they see something completely differently. And they will not be convinced of the other side. They only see what they want to see. So the people that finally see it both ways, that represents the paradigm change. They can see it from the other point of view. So what's the revolution going on right now? Growth in the crypto industry could threaten the banks and this financial stability. The Basel Committee says that's part of the IMF. The Bank of International Settlements executive advised against central banking doing anything with digital currencies. Anybody know what the Bank of International Settlements is? That's the bank of central banks. Each country has their own central bank. This is the one that keeps them all organized. But they're saying, wait a second, I know there's some talk about you central banks out here creating a digital currency. Don't do it. They're the old regime. Right now, let's talk about Facebook and Libra. Right now, worldwide, there are over 2.38 billion monthly active subscribers in Facebook. Let's compare that to the world population. Right now, it's about 7.7 million. That means Facebook is in constant control and communication with 1/3 of the world right now. Yeah. And I'm not sure if this number includes their subcategories or whatever, but 1/3 of the world, and China doesn't like Facebook. China doesn't allow Facebook, and there are other countries that ban it outright. But we're talking at least a full 1/3 of the world. If they want to get together and create a cryptocurrency monetary system, that might leave out 3 countries, how are they going to feel about that? This isn't a country, this is a whole bunch of other stuff too, but you get the idea. It rivals any one country's central bank and monetary system by a wide margin. The United States is only 4%, so it's 7 times the entire United States as far as the monetary system, and you see how great we're doing. So it represents a huge paradigm change if it goes through. Michelle. It would be such a small sliver. It's in here. It's that little pixel right there. You have to get your glasses on. It kind of faded. Bitcoin is a complete drop in the bucket. It's a microbe in the drop in the bucket. But people say, well, wait a second, we can stop Facebook, right? What about Facebook? They're 2.3838 million, but what about all their partners too? So there's people that don't have Facebook accounts, but they might have a PayPal account. They might have a credit card. So it's not just Facebook. People keep saying that in the press. It's Facebook, but it's it's all their partners too. And that's just the start. That was just the announcement. They probably have hundreds more they haven't talked about that they've been working on. They've been working on Libra for over a year now. So they've made all kinds of interconnections, and they've talked to a lot of partners, and truthfully, they've talked to a lot of banks as well about this. This is, the banks might act surprised out in public or whatever, but they've made working with these teams for over a year now. What are the foreign governments' response to that? Well, once it becomes available and it's on the news, so that's Japan, right? Oh boy, triggers alarms in Japan. What's interesting is Bitcoin is legal in Japan. You can pay for debts. You can pay for things legally. They've made it a legalized currency. How about Australia? Don't hold your breath, says the guy from the old regime that won't give up his power very easily. Oh, what about China? Oh, they don't like to centralize anything, do they? No, they said you better have, the central bank better have complete control of that. But what about all the other countries? What are they going to say about China's influence on this currency? Bank of England governor says Facebook needs to be scrutinized. Well, what about the United States lawmakers? What about the World Bank and the Bank of International Settlements? And this guy doesn't want anything to do with cryptocurrencies, right? As of March, he says, no, we don't want to touch it. It's cancer, it's gross. Everybody should stay away from it. And then last week, we may have to force central banks to actually create their own, after all. He changed his tune really fast from it. This is the most evil, unorganized, ungainly thing you could ever imagine to, oh, wait a second, paradigm change. IMF predicts, the International Monetary Fund, everybody know that? They're the bank that lends out to all the poor countries, Afghanistan, the Argentines, right? They've bailed out Argentina a couple times during hyperinflation, and they're about to get stiffed again from Argentina. They predict central banks will issue their digital currencies. This is as of just a couple weeks ago. So now they're starting to fight fire with fire, right? They realize, oh boy, now we can't just be talking our way out of this. People are seeing the model crisis. They're seeing the model drift. They sense something's wrong, and we're not going to be able to talk our ways out of this necessarily. So Ecuador became its first. This was 2015. They banned Bitcoin, and they tried to make their own. China, Iran, Venezuela are developing their own crypto to dethrone the United States. What do these countries have in common? China, Iran, Venezuela, none of them really like America. China hates having the dollar. They want more influence. They hate everybody having to use the dollar to do transactions, and they really would like the Chinese yuan to be that currency. Now here's an interesting, these are the countries and how friendly they are to Bitcoin. The green countries are super friendly, don't have a big issue with it. The ones in red completely ban it because they're generally dictatorships, and Bitcoin represents freedom, and they are anti-freedom for the most part. And then there are contentious ones like Russia. They're kind of in between. They've seen them ban it several times, and I've seen them come back and unban it several times. They're flip-flopping back and forth. The latest I heard is they want to ban it again, which doesn't surprise me, right? Bitcoin is the currency of freedom of choice, of somewhat financial responsibility of your own, and centralized institutions want to stay in power centrally. So same fight, is this something new that we've seen for the very first time? Banks are now talking about creating their own cryptocurrency. Has this happened before? A lot of people don't know our history, that banks used to create their own currency all the time. In the 1800s, almost every bank, if you were any kind of bank, you had your own currency. And some people say, well, only the US government has the right to mint coin and all that stuff. No, banks were issuing, people forget these were IOUs. This is you pass these to each other and says, you take this to the bank and they're going to give you, your value. This one's from the Pittsburgh. They're also from fairly big places, but the problem was, the Bank of Louisiana, the problem was these banks kept going under. And that was one of the reasons of the creation of the Federal Reserve is like, well, right, we need a bank that's in charge of the banks because they keep running off with people's money. So that was one of the reasons they got together to create a bank that would not fail. And it's not like a new idea. Central banks, they've been around forever. And like I said, Andrew Jackson got rid of, the Central Bank of America when he was in the presidency. But what's old is new again, right? Now JP Morgan wants to create their own coin. This is exactly like they were when they're creating their own paper dollars. Goldman Sachs, same thing. We're not going to use the JP coin. We want to create the Goldman Sachs coin. So who's going to win this battle? Is there going to be a new crypto central bank too that keeps these guys from going under and stealing, and all the secrecy and all the things that you can do with cryptocurrency, all the security possible problems you could have? Well, what do the lawmakers say about this Libra? What are they saying? Well, they're telling Facebook to halt the launch of the cryptocurrency. They're saying that they need to come talk to the Senate. And they're saying, well, we need Libra, the project manager, is saying we need help from you guys. We're not here trying to pull a fast one on you. If we're going to be taken serious, we're going to have to, ride your coattails basically to get people confidence with us. And the Senate's going to hold a hearing. This is next month, but I think didn't we say it's like the 23rd of July? I can't remember what the exact date is, but it's coming up pretty quick. And they've subpoenaed all kinds of people to be able to do this. And then, the government's been talking about creating their own Fed coin for a couple of years now. And we nickname it the Fed coin, but the cash is a real big problem with the United States, the government. You can't track transactions in cash. It's a big black box, and they hate that. They want to know what's going on everywhere, who's doing what time, timestamp, dated. They would really love to get rid of cash, and so they've been talking about the future of money. My magazine, the future of money, and they know it's probably going to be a blockchain type of thing. But they would, they've been studying Bitcoin, they've been studying all these other technologies, and so they're they want to do it. I think they've admitted several times that this is on their plans for someday in the future. So when Libra comes out, that's a good reason for Donald Trump to say, wait a second, US dollar all the way, baby. It's not going anywhere. This Libra thing is junk. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain over there. So what's some differences between, what we've come known, love as Bitcoin and Libra? So we talk about some of the differences. So Bitcoin is decentralized. No one controls it. Facebook, on the other hand, has an association, and the association has a large amount of control over the asset and its usage. The value of Bitcoin price is not dependent on any single government, and people can see different ways on the same currency. With Libra, it's tied to the national currencies and their stable values, so it's a basket of currencies. We have something like that right now called the special drawing rights. All the countries can't decide on the value of one country, so they don't want to be held hostage to the value of one country's currency like the US dollar. So they basket a whole bunch of them together, and they call it special drawing rights. So this isn't anything new. So they're just basically borrowing that idea. Bitcoin is deflationary as far as the money supply. The Libra Association, who knows? I don't know that they've said, and I've glanced over the white paper, and I don't think they didn't commit to a certain amount that would be created. And the blockchain type. Blockchain's permissionless. Miners can simply just begin mining it at their own discretion, and this is going to be permissioned. Libra will have the association, at least initially, they're going to have to get permission to run a node that will validate those transactions are actually true. Andrei Antonopoulos, anybody know who Andrei is? Great speaker. He's come up with the idea of the 5 pillars of a good open blockchain: open, public, neutral, borderless, censorship resistance. And I compare the two, or I look at Libra based on that lens, and I say, does Libra qualify for something we could call an open currency? Is it open? No, Libra is currently closed to permission developers, and it's based in Switzerland. It has a center. It's not just completely open. Is it public? No, it's private and permission. It's proof of stake. The going rate's $10 million if you want a piece of Libra to get in there and be one of their developers. So MasterCard paid their $10 million, PayPal paid their $10 million. So they pay to play. Is it neutral? No, it has a center beginning with Facebook. Legislators of the world are trying to stop it. If you have a center, they can come after you. If you have a governance system, they can stop you. Who are they going to stop if they want to? Who's the CEO of Bitcoin? Who are they going to go after? There's nobody. It's a thin air. Borderless. Facebook is banned in many countries. We talked about that. You can't get Facebook in China. Will Facebook even be required, though? Does it need centralized exchanges? They're trying to figure out who's going to be trading this right now, but it can be person to person, and they're developing their own wallet. So it'll have some of the characteristics of Bitcoin, but it has a center. That's its biggest problem. Censorship resistance? No. If governments can stop it, or they can impose their limits on it that says you will report the security, you will report who's doing what, they can enforce their own designs into the cryptocurrency and force them to program certain things into it. But as a global, worldwide currency, whose rules do you follow? Right? If they have competing ideas and competing things that they want to see put into it, who does Libra listen to? You know, the headquarters of Facebook's here, but they started the foundation in Switzerland, Swiss, because they're generally neutral to everything. Now, blockchain is only 10 years old. We have the Cambrian explosion of innovation, and past the currency, these inventions are less than 5 years old. We are here to witness this. You know, you'll be telling your kids, I was there when cloud storage was not invented yet. Commercial vehicles and transportation, credit history, cybersecurity, charity, banking, and fintech, automotive, music, streaming, medical, healthcare, real estate, travel, wills, and inheritance. Oh, but that's not all. Media, marketing, legal, law enforcement, Internet of Things, insurance, human resources, gun safety, government, voting, forecasting, energy, education, donations. I looked at a similar graph of this that was done in 2016. It had half of this stuff in it. I looked at the same graph in 2014, and there was like 4 spikes on it. So it is exploding, and it's getting faster. They said the universe is still getting bigger and bigger. They thought it was going to collapse on itself, but no, they found out the universe is actually growing faster than the speed of light. They didn't think that was possible, but this new invention that you're here to witness happens maybe once in 1,000 years, maybe 2,000 years, but you are in that tiny little sliver of time when it was first conceived and first thought of and first issued onto the world. But is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Definitely, you're living in interesting times. We're going to have to see how this unfolds. So that's it. I have credits here if you guys want to see where I got a lot of this data. You can email me and I'll send it to you. Thank you. That took us right to 8 o'clock. Is that when we're supposed to kind of start heading out of here? 8 o'clock? Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, we'll go ahead and try and field those. Let's get you first. Matt has actually looked at the code on GitHub, right? So, open source. You did on a testnet. Great. So from what I understand, and a lot of people, even Andre Antonopoulos will tell you, it's a great white paper. It's a great idea. They've incorporated a mismatch of a ton of different blockchains, the best of the best in there. So on a technical level, it's very cool, very encouraging. It's on the social level and the political level and the centralized level that things start to break down. Well, Facebook realizes there's a great opportunity. You know, they're in trouble with security, and there's, you know, how many people more are you going to get on Facebook, right? Eventually, they're going to get to a point where they don't have internet access or whatever. They're going to have to deal with that slowing down, and they got investors going, "What's next? What's next? You got to do something." And they look at all the problems. They see the same crisis that we're seeing. It says, you know, we got 180 currencies. We you know, people trying to do business with each other, and it takes 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever. Same exact reasons that Bitcoin validated itself for a reason to exist. They're riding on those same coattails. Like, oh, we're trying to bank the unbanked. You know, they spout off the same things about the amount of people that don't have access to banking but have a mobile phone. The exact same things I was telling people about in 2013, word for word, Libra are telling people again today. So they're using the same excuses, and they're valid. I think we have a big problem with central banks. I think we have a big problem with our monetary systems and all the good old boy system that want to keep things the way they are. I think it's ripe for disruption. I think Libra is something that could do that. I think it's come from the outside of the banking system. The banking systems would have tried to kill that if that would have been anybody would have brought that up inside the banks. So it's that thing that fits the model exactly. It's coming from outside the banking system. And it's coming from something that the good old boy system hates, right? Fintech, these new Silicon Valley people. The problem with I have, though, anybody know the definition of fascism? It's when they get corporations and governments working together, right? That's the definition, really the definition of what you get with fascism. So Matt, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's suspiciously silent, isn't it? Yeah, well, Apple cash on hand is over $200 billion. Cash on hand, they're just not doing anything with it. They could go, buy a lot of this stuff with cash on hand. They don't even have to get investors. These guys are getting $10 million pay to play for 100 investors, whatever. They got $100 million. Well, that's a drop in the bucket for Apple. That's nothing. And they're suspiciously silent, right? And so, no, I haven't heard anything. Been silent. They may have their own pet projects. That people, there's been rumors about Google. Anybody see the show, Mr. Robot? Yeah, I love Mr. Robot. That's a great show. And what was their coin in there, the crypto coin that they were doing? It was sort of a takeoff of a Google company that was, but I can't remember. It was all, but that second season you realize that the gist of the story was all about a new cryptocurrency coming out by a fascism organization, gigantic corporation working in cahoots with government stuff. And if you haven't seen Mr. Robot, I don't know. I can't remember what channel it's on, but it's on like third season, and it's really cool. Oh, right. Libra and Amazon. Amazon's gigantically huge. Amazon, a lot of people don't know, actually put trademark franchise on several different words out there that were related to cryptocurrency. It's been a couple of years now. But yeah, do a Google search on the Amazon crypto patents, and they've got several as well. And I know PayPal's got several patents in cryptocurrency. So I suspect this is just Pandora's box being opened by Facebook, and they're going to start rattling some feathers, and they're going to make some people very uncomfortable, and they're going to start a lot of conversations. But I don't think that's going to be the end of it. I can't think of anything more powerful. 2.3 billion people. And they're addicted to Facebook. I tried thinking of ways to get off of Facebook 100 times, but then it serves a purpose. How do you do that? And then all of a sudden you lose touch with all the people you hadn't heard from for 30 years, and now all of a sudden you're kind of sort of keeping in touch, and that goes away. Then there's a big piece of your life that goes away with it. So until something comes out that's better, I'm sort of stuck. Someone else have a question? James, go ahead. Well, you saw now hope they put that in perspective, right? The paradigm change, the cycles. Does that surprise you a bit, knowing that this happens over and over and over in history? I would expect it. I'd be shocked if President Trump or some of these guys in charge says, you know what, that's a great idea. Why didn't we think of that? Let's go with that. No, they're going to fight that because they didn't think of it, and anything they didn't think of is a risk to them, right? Especially these people in charge are narcissistic. If it didn't come from me, or if I'm not stealing their idea, it's a bad idea. So knowing the cycles of paradigms that happen over and over and over, this is what I would expect to see. It's not something, that's not to say that it's going to turn out on our side and it'll all be good and wars have gone on for less, as far as taking over somebody's power supply. And in the United States, see, they don't just use money as money, they use it as a weapon. What's the first thing they do if you're an enemy of the United States? Cut off your banking system, cut off your supply. They tell anybody that's doing banking with their suppliers that they're going to cut you off. So money is a weapon of the United States, and they know because they've got the reserve currency, they can wield that, and it's much more effective than putting sanctions on them. You can argue how effective it is in the long term. The rich people in charge seem to get theirs no matter what, as the rest of the population starves. But this is a national security threat to every country because of how it might affect their economies. Yeah, go ahead. I think it's right. We have this partnership with a whole bunch of people, so they can start saying, Zuckerberg, you better come to court. We're going to put you in jail, whatever. Okay, it's in Switzerland. they've already got a ton of other partners. Okay, maybe they're centralized too. Maybe they start whack-a-mole into some of these other companies, and there's people that say, we need Libra, and so it goes open source, and it just takes on a life of its own like Bitcoin. So I could see them trying to squash it, and it just squirm out in a way, and the genie's out of the bottle. Now, will it take over Bitcoin and take over some of these other cryptocurrencies and stuff? I don't know, but I think there's a good chance it could. And so I wouldn't bet against it. You know, if they're going to have it on the open exchange and stuff, I'm telling you, I'll sprinkle a little money into Libra, see what happens. So, yeah, go ahead. Oh yeah, yeah. We know that there are so many people that don't have bank accounts. So we see a third of the world that you can't even get it. Right. Yeah, I agree. And Bitcoin wants to do that kind of stuff, but it's a drop in the bucket. Mm-hmm. Right, and so we have one of the biggest entities in the world, and they're creating a stable coin, so they actually have to work with these central governments to be able to keep that in a basket, and they're making the right moves right now. They're saying, look, we can't do this without you guys. You know, you don't dig in your heels and fight them. You take what they have and say, oh, that's a great idea, and you kind of merge your ideas together, and with that approach, you know, where you're not battling them, but you're enveloping them, you know, adopt and merge their ideas. I think they have a good chance of, it may not look like exactly like it does today, but there's a good chance something will survive.
So, good news or bad news? Donald Trump tweets about Libra, and then the hearing can't speak about Libra. Is that good or bad news?
I think, well, most of the people who don't know much about Bitcoin, right? They've heard the name, they've heard some of the rumors. There's a lot of, it's a mystery money and whatnot. So president comes out and puts a big spotlight on it, maybe there's a bunch of people that go, oh, what is this thing again? And then, you know, Donald Trump is super divisive, so half the people, what is that? What's going on? But I hate to be talking stereotypes, but Republicans generally like uncentralized things, and Democrats generally like centralized things. And so when president is the divisive person says something that he's pro or against something, he's automatically going to track the opposite side for whatever reason. So it might be. I think the Wyoming, what's her name, Catherine? Caitlin in Wyoming. We've met her, great person. She's got the political lobbying ears of a lot of people in the finance side and does a lot of good for Wyoming. And she tweeted something in response to President Trump that was very insightful and very professional, that you're being misled by your advisors. And Trump's not an expert on very much. In fact, I watched an article, or not an article, I watched a news report that says, what about WikiLeaks? What do you think about WikiLeaks? And he's like, I don't know anything about WikiLeaks, da, da, da. But during his campaign, I love WikiLeaks, you know, because WikiLeaks kept benefiting him with all the leaks of the Democratic stuff. And he went on and on, you know, they had little clips, little snippets there, love WikiLeaks, oh, these guys at WikiLeaks are great. And then, you know, when they get Assange, he says, oh, that's not my thing. I don't know about WikiLeaks. But they says, well, who do you think about the golf tournament coming up? And he rattled off 10 minutes of every contender in golf that was going to go on. He could tell you who had the energy and who didn't have it, what their records were. And you're like, you know, you can tell what the guy pays attention to and what he doesn't pay attention to. The guy likes his golf. And so does he pay much attention to Bitcoin? I doubt it. He's got advisors that do all that kind of stuff for him. So he just kind of spouts off. But someone said, and rightfully so, this could be a challenge to your power of persuasion as a country, because everybody needs the dollar. We are the dominant currency. We use that as a weapon of war. This has the potential to be taken so seriously that it could put that in some kind of peril. And so he is reactionary to that information. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Exactly. Right. And email, everything. There's a whole nother world. Yeah. Well, you're going to find decentralized exchanges. We'll be happy to take Libra. Shapeshift, I know, is already, hey, this is the greatest thing in the world. You know, the Eric Voorhees thinks, you know, hey, let's sign up, let's get up. I think so. I think once people see that and then they get, it's available on decentralized exchanges, you don't need to sign up for whatever. They're going to see how easy it is to convert in and out of Bitcoin and all these other things that can possibly make a lot of money. Libra's going to stay pretty stable, right? It's meant to be stable, but it's all of a sudden now you've got 2 billion on-ramps into other crypto that don't need to go through, like I said, decentralized exchanges. There is no on-ramps. They're just, once you got your wallet, someone's going to program a way to leapfrog right into the decentralized exchange with a nice new interface. And so I think net it's going to be huge. I mean, this may take a decade or more to get through all the hurdles and every, you know, all the world leaders that want to have their say so, and we might have to have eventually some of these old geezers die off that are, you know, anti-Libra, anti-crypto. Who knows? It might. I wouldn't say it's going to be in the next year or two. I might be surprised, but in the next 5, likely, decades, probably very, very, very good chance that we'll see something like Libra. Go ahead. Right. Right. Right now, the central bank gives money to the regular banks to make loans. Regular banks really don't need to exist. Central bank can issue all the loans in one place. They don't need different tentacles and arms all over the country to be able to do that. And that was an astute observation by the Bank of England, you know, back in 2013. It's like, central bank can make loans. They can do all this stuff with their own currency. We don't need regional city banks anymore. That really screws them up because the city banks and the local banks make loans, which in effect create money. Money's made of debt, so when they create a loan for a truck, all of a sudden they got all this new money into the system. Looks like debt, but it's, you know, kind of money. And they can't control, other than by interest rates, they don't have much control about what the local bankers do. They can control how much money they print and go into debt to do that, but there's two hands, the right and the left hand don't really know what each other's doing creating money. And the local banks create a lot more money than the Federal Reserves and the central banks do. So they would gain a lot more control of saying, we don't need those local banks. We don't need the left hand doing all this stuff anymore. We can control everything with the right hand. There's a guy named Milton Friedman that espoused an idea back in the 70s that says, we don't need a central bank. All we need is a computer that regulates the amount of money. It can be done on a computer program that says, look at the indicators or whatever. We don't need people in there making decisions and being political and whatnot. And he called it the K theory. I wrote an article about that, Milton Friedman. And so is Libra some kind of very beginning ripple point to replacing central banks? Some would say we don't need these anymore. Who knows? We're at a paradigm change. Yeah, go ahead. Well, the thing is, those families, and I wrote another article that talked about this too. Some experts spent years tracking the money, following the money, and found out that over 90% of the world money supply, I think it was 90%, don't quote me on that exact number, but a huge majority of the money's supply system could be traced back to 8 families in the world. 8 families control a huge, huge majority of the money when they you know, they really drill down to all the things and the Rothschilds and stuff. I'm sure, you know, some of your mind, but you have to remember these guys have been in the power structure for 500 years or 300 years, whatever. These families have been the Medicis. They've been running the show for a long time. So when they see something like that, are they going to like kick up their heels and fight it? Or are they going to say, yeah, okay, we'll just add that to our balance sheet, and they'll keep on keeping on. You know, they'll just roll with the punches. They're not dumb. They stay in power for a reason. So they'll say, "Ooh, what's the popular president? What's the popular majority? What's the popular political party? Let's support them," and they'll support us right back. So I don't see this being a threat to them at all. They'll probably just get under it and ride the wave, and just that'll just be part of their balance. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We see how much debt we're getting into. We're seeing, you know, how many trillions of debt. We're in by far more debt than any country too. So we have the power and authority right now, but we see these things unwind very fast as well. Debt bubbles, debt. I mean, we see how. Remember that thin line we were when they went and begged Congress to get the TARP bill that would actually save the entire monetary system. In fact, you could very easily think when these banks go down, the central banks go down, we're at World War. They were that close to World War. So, see, America, they're so financial, they're so dominant right now, that was that close. Is that it? Okay. I guess that's it. Oh, okay. $1 million. We talked about that. What could you fit $1 million into if you were holding it? What was that? A briefcase? Who said that? I think you raised your hand first. Is it? So I guess it's yours.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Let's give him a great round of applause. This was awesome. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you coming out of retirement and putting together a presentation. So that was an incredible presentation. I know I learned a lot. Show of hands, who learned something from Mark today? All right, Mark, you impact people's lives. Real quick, before we close here, I want to show you the tweet from Donald Trump just for historical purposes, because I guarantee you tomorrow morning you're going to see this on all the news cycles. And whenever there's some sort of event where Congress decides to come after cryptocurrencies or questions cryptocurrencies, something always happens with Bitcoin. Good news or bad news, up or down, something just happens, and it's crazy. And this is going to be history, and it just happened barely. I'm not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activities. Similarly, Facebook's Libra virtual currency will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like the other banks, both national and international. We only have one real currency in the United States, and it is stronger than ever, both dependable and reliable. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will always stay that way. It is called the United States dollar. So thank you, Donald Trump. This will be all over the news tomorrow. So I think this is historic. So anyway, on that note, thank you so much for coming. Huh? Oh yeah, Caitlin Long. So Caitlin Long, for those of you who don't know who Caitlin Long is, she's a former Wall Street banker. And so in the cryptocurrency space, she actually has a really good reputation because she understands finance and banking and the derivatives market really well. And she's moved to Wyoming, and she's working with the Wyoming government to pass a lot of new laws, new regulatory landscape, so that way cryptocurrency companies can build there. So here's what she wrote. Mr. President, Wyoming, the state that gave you the highest margin of victory in 2016, even bigger than Reagan, welcomes law-abiding crypto companies and created a new type of bank charter to allow them to comply with the law. You are just wrong on this. Your staff is misleading you. Your staff isn't giving you good advice. I don't see anyone on your staff who has experience on this new asset class. The US payment system hasn't really innovated in 50 years. It's unstable and inefficient. I have been surprised that your administration has coddled it instead of opening it up to healthy competition. The crypto genie can't be put back in the bottle, and if the US fights this, we will simply be bypassed by other countries that are welcoming it. Banks tried to shut down crypto by shunning the industry, and look what happened. It didn't die. Why? Because this is the first serious payment innovation in decades. Yes, crypto is used for illegal activities, but much less frequently than the dollar is. And crypto is easier to track. Check with the FBI. Mr. President, you do not need to choose between crypto and the dollar. To close, please invite crypto experts to advise you. You need to hear the other side. And you need to understand how Wyoming has created a regulatory compliant framework to let this innovation thrive in a lawful manner and ensure the US keeps our lead in financial services. And so Caitlin's actually the one that, thank you. Oh yeah, those were not my words. Giving Caitlin some props. She's the one that puts on the Wyoming Hackathon in Wyoming. So, these are big players in the space, and we know kind of everybody. So, a lot of big news happening here. So, anyway, thanks a lot for coming, guys. Appreciate it. If you hang out afterwards for about 30 minutes, people just kind of hang out and network. So, thanks a lot, and be sure to thank Mark Rees as well. All right, have a good one. Oh, yeah. Do you want to? Did you organize something for the? Sometimes afterwards, if you hang around for like 30 minutes, we'll go grab drinks or dinner afterwards. So if you want to continue to talk crypto, if you're like me and you have a kid at home, this is like the one day a month you actually get to leave the house. And so I'm always going. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.